Étouffée is a beautifully classic Cajun and Creole dish that involves a protein smothered in a really tasty sauce. This year, I searched far and wide in Seattle to find crawfish because it's the standard étouffée pairing, but the options are pretty limited. This recipe utilizes the closest thing I've been able to find nearby and readily available, which is Langoustinos from Trader Joe's. The results are super delicious, really seafoody, and still hit that crawfish craving without having to ship stuff halfway across the country. Here's how to make it. Like all good Cajun and Creole dishes, we'll start with the Trinity: yellow onion, bell pepper, and celery. For my Trinity, I like 2 parts onion, 1 part bell pepper, and 1 part celery. I like my étouffée without any tomato in it, which pushes this into a Cajun version rather than a Creole version. Dice all your veggies into a medium fine dice, and then we can move on to the garlic. I like my garlic quite a bit, but I don't want it to overpower this dish, so I'll just use 4 minced cloves. The way that I like to mince it is just running it through a microplane, and you get this like delicious paste. Works really well in a dish like this. The rest of the prep is super easy. Measure out 50 mils of a tasty white wine, not a requirement, but I think it's nice here, and 500 mils of fish stock or water. I found a super delicious fish stock that I really love, but if you don't have one, just use water. It's classic and it's not gonna hurt the dish. But a little tip, if you want that like extra seafoody flavor, use water with like a little bit of clam juice. You can find it at a grocery store. It's gonna give a lot of really good seafoody flavor without overpowering the dish. In a pot over medium heat, begin melting 50 grams of butter and add 50 grams of all-purpose flour once it's melted. For our roux, we'll use butter because it's gonna give extra delicious flavor here. If we were making a dark roux, the butter would burn before it gets there. In this case, we'll be safe though, because we're just making a kind of peanut butter colored roux. For a standard roux making procedure, keep the flour mix moving around over medium heat as the browning begins to take place. It's gonna take a while, so feel free to pour a little bit of that white wine we opened earlier. My parents are Italian Irish Catholic, and so our kitchen was full of like 40 wine decorations. We had like, God, it's so ridiculous. Like everything was made of cork or like wine pieces. We had all those like, I love to cook with wine. Sometimes I even put it in the food stickers. I feel like those are like the live, laugh, love of Italian families. Just a whole ridiculous thing. Oh, I love it, love them. Back at our roux, it's been about 10 minutes of mixing and things are looking really good. Browning is nice, but not like a dark chocolate yet. For this dish, I like it somewhere right around peanut butter. Now we can add our Trinity and mix that to combine while the veggies begin to sweat. Cook these until they're nice and softened, but be sure that the roux doesn't darken too much. The veggies should give enough water into the pan to where it's not gonna darken, but just keep an eye on it. Once they're nicely softened, add in your garlic and let that begin to cook as well. After a minute, add your 50 mils of wine and mix that immediately. It's gonna end up as a pasty mess, but that's okay. The liquid we're about to put in is gonna loosen it up anyways. Add your 500 mils of fish stock a little at a time so you don't end up with lumps in the gravy. Season this now with a bunch of black pepper, 4 to 5 grams of Cajun seasoning, and 2 grams of garlic powder. If you want a little bit spicier and peppery, you can add more Cajun seasoning. It can just kind of overpower everything else. So a range of like 4 to 6 is pretty good. 6 being the high end, you're gonna end up with a lot spicier. 4 being a lower, you're gonna end up milder. If you go 4, you're gonna wanna add more salt to the dish, so just keep that in mind. Toss in a bay leaf here as well. This needs to simmer for at least 30 minutes covered for the flavors of the sauce to fully develop. I feel like this is an issue a lot of people have with roux, is they make it and then they don't spend the time to cook it out. This can really only happen with time. Stir this every few minutes to make sure that the sauce doesn't stick to the bottom and burn, and you're pretty much good to go. At this point, wash 200 grams of white rice until the water runs clear, and then add it to a pot with 350 mils of water. Season this with a large pinch of salt, and I might as well throw a bay leaf in here as well. Bring it up to a simmer and then cover it. Turn the heat down to low and set a 20-minute timer. Once the timer goes off, turn off the heat and just let it sit for a few minutes while we finish the dish. I think that's a really good way to get perfect rice on the stove. It's fluffy and it's gonna go so well with the étouffée. If you're using these Langoustinos, they're already cooked, so we don't have to worry about doing anything crazy to them. Once I start simmering my sauce, I start defrosting the frozen tails. Place the bag in a bowl and let that sit in cool water to defrost. These are basically a cross between a crawfish tail, a shrimp, and a lobster, so I think they end up tasting really delicious. You can use shrimp instead if you can't find it, but also, étouffée means to smother something, so any protein really works here. Crawfish and Langoustino is just kind of like the classic vibe that I go for. By the time the sauce has finished and cooked to a beautiful rich brown, these should be defrosted. Wash the defrosted tails just to make sure that there isn't something that you don't want in them, and then drain off the water. It's been about 30 minutes, so we can remove the bay leaf from the sauce and taste it really quick just to make sure it's smooth and delicious and flavorful. Add a little bit of fresh thyme along with a few dashes of a Louisiana-based hot sauce. This brings some much needed acidity to the sauce. This should be much thicker than something like a gumbo, definitely thick enough to coat the back of a spoon. Taste this one last time for salt levels. If you used less Cajun, you're gonna need more salt, and inverse is true as well. Add your Langoustinos to the hot gravy and give this a chance to warm through. They really only need a few minutes, so don't overcook them. Because they're cooked already, if you overcook them, they're gonna end up a little bit chewier. You really just need them warm, so like 2 to 4 minutes at most. We can begin plating this beautiful étouffée. If you wanna go like really, really rustic, just put your rice to the side and put the étouffée to the right of it and just dig right in. But if you want it to look a little bit nicer, put your étouffée on the bottom and then do the little like cup trick with the rice where you put it in a little ramekin and then flip it out on top of the étouffée. Some green onion is really nice, a little bit of parsley is really nice, but you don't need much to make this dish delicious. This is that classic sort of home-cooked, warm your soul type meal, just made really, really easy to replicate. The savory flavors you're getting from all of the seafood, including the seafood stock, or if you used water and clam juice, are really, really delicious, serve as a really good backbone for those Langostino tails or crawfish tails to really shine. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed it. I wanna give a massive shout out to the amazing people supporting me directly on Patreon through patreon.com/CameronMarty. They get some cool benefits for supporting the channel, and I get to keep the lights on. It's a win-win. Consider checking it out and becoming a patron. Now, if you're looking for another recipe based on seafood, check out this scallop recipe. It's super delicious and uses a bunch of fresh ingredients to give you a very, very fancy feeling dish. Thanks again for watching. Cheers.